When you think about the German football club Borussia Dortmund, what comes to mind? Well, perhaps their mastery of the transfer market, how they buy low, sell high, and serve as a finishing school for Europe's best talent. You might think about their defined style of football, their playing identity, or how they've stood up to Bayern Munich's dominance in the Bundesliga. Or maybe you just think about how they became a byword for a well-run club, to be admired and emulated by wasteful, inefficient elite teams everywhere. Because over the past couple of decades, the club has built a very strong brand based on precisely these notions. The quote Dortmund Way brand is so strong that it persists even now, despite the perhaps surprising reality that some of this isn't true anymore, that this vision of Borussia Dortmund is actually out of date. Borussia Dortmund were once one of Europe's great underdogs. This used to be true. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the club enjoyed a period of success fueled by excessive spending. But in 2005, Dortmund came close to bankruptcy and were subsequently forced to operate under a strict budget for the rest of the decade. But then, in 2008, the club acquired a young German manager on the rise, and against the odds, they built an elite team on a shoestring budget. Jurgen Klopp's attractive brand of football was known in Germany as gegenpressing, and it was remarkably successful. Dortmund won back-to-back Bundesliga titles in 2011 and 2012, and then in 2013 they reached the Champions League final with a starting 11 that had cost just over 40 million euros to build. Now, inevitably, wealthier teams came in for their best players, but Dortmund navigated this by finding the world's best young players and offering them a shop window to the biggest clubs in Europe. Buying low and selling high became synonymous with their transfer operations, and it was a reputation that they were happy to perpetuate, with then CEO Hans-Joachim Watzke conducting numerous interviews advocating for the Dortmund Way. But in more recent years, it's not been exactly clear what that is. You see, the youth that defined their success is now mostly gone. Of the team who reached the Champions League final in 2013, 7 were under the age of 25. And long-serving goalkeeper Roman Weidenfeller was the only player over the age of 30. By the time they achieved the same feat in 2024, only 3 players were aged under 25, and 2 of them were on loan, while 4 players were 30 or over. Now, this is partly because their ability to outsmart the market has waned in recent years. We still think of Dortmund as a club that signs young players, but of their last 20 permanent signings, 12 have been over the age of 25. And in the 2024-25 season, just 2 players under the age of 23 have made more than 10 starts. Consequently, the buy low and sell high mantra that defined their brand has largely vanished too. And since 2017-18, only 4 players have left the club for more than 30 million euros. Plus, during this period, other clubs in Germany have closed the gap on this strategy. Xabi Alonso used 27 players en route to Bayer Leverkusen's historic League and Cup double in the 23-24 season, and 19 of them arrived at the club before the age of 23. Eintracht Frankfurt and RB Leipzig, meanwhile, have sold 6 players for over 30 million euros since 2018, and both are well positioned to continue that trend this summer. Now, of course, up against the might of Bayern, Dortmund can still fairly claim to be underdogs, but that same logic doesn't apply to these sides. Dortmund are no longer the cash-strapped side of the late 2000s. They ranked 11th in the 2025 Deloitte Money League, above Atletico Madrid and Inter Milan. Frankfurt, meanwhile, were 24th, while Leverkusen and Leipzig weren't even inside the top 30. And it's also worth pointing out that in today's game, young players are savvier than ever. In-demand players want to understand a club's culture, its tactical approach, and how that might benefit their career before joining. Equally, it's important that scouts have clearly defined characteristics to search for in order to find players that will suit that culture. Dortmund used to have this with Klopp's heavy metal football, but in recent years that stylistic clarity has waned. The club has appointed 8 managers in the 10 years since Klopp left, and to a certain extent, each has had their own playing style. And the disappearance of Dortmund's front-footed identity has caused friction among the players too. For example, prior to the 2024 Champions League final, Mats Hummels was scathing in his criticism of Edin Terzic's tactics in a series of games earlier that season. I felt insulted in my honour to stand on the pitch in that kit. So submissive, so inferior in footballing terms. And of course, both Hummels and Terzic left in the summer of 2024, but the high-pressing football has still not really returned. Nuri Sahin's ill-fated spell saw Dortmund players drop to 9th for the most sprints in the Bundesliga, 14th for the most intensive runs, and 14th for the most distance covered. Now, there have been some signs of revival since Niko Kovac's appointment in February 2025, but Borussia Dortmund still appear to be a club that have lost their way. and it remains unclear if the Dortmund Way will ever be revived. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and James Horncastle. With the latest transfer news and insight on every Premier League football story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.